Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell with me, your host, Mark Decano. You know, I'm often asked, why would you want comedians to sum up comedy in a nutshell? Well, maybe it's because I'm fascinated by how different comedians' viewpoints on their experiences shape their philosophies. Maybe because I needed a simple USP. Or maybe because no one has ever asked me that question. I love talking to the people in comedy about comedy, and if you like to hear what they have to say as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is an actor, writer and award-winning comedian with years of experience performing shows at the Edinburgh Fringe, as well as writing for and appearing on shows like The News Quiz and The Bugle. It's stand-up comedian Ian Smith. So tell me how you started with comedy. How did it get to you? Was it on like television? Was it family? How did that work?
Yeah, it's hard to remember because it was so long ago when I did sketches with two of my friends in school.
Yeah.
So we'd have been like 13, 14, and we put on like a show at our little 80-seater local theatre. We did like half an hour of sketches and a little half an hour play.
Yeah.
And I have no memory of why we did that, but we did that for we did it 1 year and then maybe a couple of years later we did it again. And when it got to the point where I kind of realized, oh, friends go to uni and we're not going to be in a sketch group forever. So that was when I started going, oh, but I really love this. I guess I've got to do it by myself. And started looking up more kind of comedy. But I think at that point, the only comedy I really knew was Peter Kay and Phoenix Nights.
Right, yeah.
So definitely stuff like that got me into it. Yeah. And watching the DVD of Phoenix Nights and watching the outtakes and watching people kind of laughing and sort of bullying each other. But it just looked like such a fun job. That was always the dream, to be involved in an outtake at some point.
So what came first, becoming a comedian or becoming an actor?
Well, I guess I always really liked doing drama at school.
Yeah.
And I did think before I went to uni, I thought I would maybe study drama. But I was too scared. I thought it would involve lots of dance and singing, and I was so shy. I did a few drama workshops where they had you on the floor, pretending to be a cat, and all those kind of cliches of drama school.
A little acorn.
Yeah. I just thought, I don't think I could do that. Yeah. But so maybe that did come first. But I guess it's always been comedy since I started doing it.
Yeah. Did you have an idea when you became a comedian of the sort of comedian that you were going to be?
No, probably. I was so clueless when I started.
Right.
It took a lot of watching things and researching a bit because, I remember being in a new act competition and doing very much gags, and then seeing someone else come on and do really just conversational stuff.
Yeah.
And I was really, really young, and I remember thinking, how are they getting? They're just talking,
yeah,
and they're funny. Whereas I'm having to go, here's your setup, here's your punchline.
Right.
So I kind of slowly realized that that was the kind of stuff I liked. Quite natural. I remember seeing Daniel Kitson at the Edinburgh Fringe and being kind of blown away by how you can do silly, sweary, observational stand-up, but with philosophy and emotional depth.
Yeah.
So it's always been the aim to try and do something like that.
Yeah. So you're more of these days are more of a storyteller, would you say? Well, or some observation.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think certainly my last shows have tended to be more a loose story, and I think I get my best stuff out of going into a situation that might be a bit unusual or uncomfortable, and relaying. I find if something happens to me, I find it quite easy to extrapolate and exaggerate and make that funny. I'm not as much one for I think the show I'm doing now is there's quite a few observations that seem to land,
Yeah.
which I quite like. But yeah, never before really have I gone, oh, we all do this. But yeah, I think I have one observation where at the minute I am saying in the setup the words "we all," which feels very like old school observational comedian.
Yeah. So if you're in those situations where you think you might have a story, are you in the moment thinking I can get a good 10, 15 minutes or an hour out of this situation that's happening around me now?
Yeah, I try not to be. So like when me and my brother went to Chernobyl, maybe like 4 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking when my brother was mentioning wanting to go, I remember thinking, well, that would be a fun thing to do, and he really wants to do it. But I imagine I will get material out of that.
Yeah.
But trying to just be in the moment when you're there. But then yeah, afterwards it feels quite easy to get like your laptop out or a pad and just bullet point.
Yeah.
What were the unusual things, or what could there be a joke in? And they don't all work, but just basically making a note of everything that I could kind of try and exaggerate a bit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the beginning then. Did you do a course? Did you start anything like that?
No. I just I did a gig at what was the Other Side Comedy Club that Dan Atkinson used to run. And I wanted to do a gig when I was like 16, but my mum and dad wouldn't let me. And they're in control because they're the only ones who could drive me there. But they made me go and watch a gig at that venue before I did it, which I think was very wise, so that they could I think they wanted me to know that how rowdy it could get and how difficult it is and what the level is and stuff. So yeah, I watched one, and then like a year later was booked in and did very, very rare for like a first gig now, because if you're in London, you're on an open mic night with 25 other comedians. But I was like, there's compare 2 comedians, me in the middle. The other 2 comedians are like full-time professional comics. And I was doing like my first ever 10 minutes, and it's a sold out room of 150 people. So yeah, it was kind of in at the deep end, and I wasn't ready. I had 5 minutes of material, and then did 5 minutes of improv.
Right.
And the improv went better than the material, I remember. Which I think I still do that now. I improvise a lot. I find that quite easy, but yeah, I remember it being pretty terrifying.
Yeah. So how did it go? What was the response to the audience?
Well, I really have no idea, other than I remember the story that I told went like okay, but I hadn't written it. I think and I still do this now, where I write everything like to the deadline.
Right.
But I think because it's scary, I just put it out of my mind a little bit. And on the car journey there, I was thinking, what the fuck am I going to say? I haven't even thought about this. This is stupid. Yeah, but I do remember after 5 minutes, I looked at my watch and said, well, that's all the material I've got. So I guess I've got to improvise now. What should we talk about? And I think March of the Penguins had just come out.
Right.
I don't know if that date's when I did my gig, but so I think I started talking about that.
Yeah.
But no idea what I said, but I know that bit went well.
Right.
And then I just looked at my watch and was like, okay, well, yeah, I've done 10 minutes now. I didn't have a closing joke. I just went, okay. That's my time.
What did you get? Like feedback, a response from the other acts, from the MC?
Yeah, they were really nice. Remember Dan and a comedian called Silky was there.
Yeah, I know Silky. Yeah,
and yeah, they were really nice. Like, I imagine there was no specific feedback because it's like your first gig, and also they must have known he's just done 5 minutes of improv because he doesn't have any material, so can't even give him feedback on his improv. on March of the Penguins. But yeah, they were very nice, and certainly like the first 3 or 4 gigs I did, I think the first 3 went really well, and was feeling quite good, and maybe the 4th or 5th I died on my ass,
right.
And this is like a long time ago, but Russell Kane and Gary Delaney were the other acts on the bill, like again up north, like sandwiched in between 2 really good acts, and they were both so nice about it. I can't remember which one of them said. They said like when you're booking in gigs, book in like 3 or 4 at a time, because this is going to happen to you when you're doing comedy.
Yeah.
And if you book in one more gig and then you die on your ass, the chance of you booking in another one is going to decrease. Or you might. So they were just like, just book in 3 or 4, keep doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably going to happen every 4th gig you do until you improve and get better. And it's quite nice to have that sort of blunt, like genuine sort of, rather than just going, no, it was great, to go, that wasn't good, and it's not going to be good every now and then. It's quite good.
Yeah, it's interesting because like acting and comedy, these are professions that are asking for rejection, literally saying, okay, I need your approval, I need you're okay.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you've had a few shows there which have gone well, and then suddenly it's a no from the audience. What kind of gear change is that?
Yeah, I mean, when you're starting out, it's pretty massive, because you're starting out full of like dreams of like, oh, I'd love to do this, and I could play in this place and these theaters or this or that. So when it doesn't go well, you kind of, I think I will think, oh, I'm a fucking idiot. Why did I think I could do this? But now I think I only get that with previewing an Edinburgh show, because previews can be so weird, and you can do previews to 10 people and they don't really know that it's a work in progress. So they're disappointed that you've got notes and you haven't learned stuff. And so the gig can go kind of disproportionately weirdly. And then Edinburgh can end up being great. But you have to go through 3 months of having a good preview, having a bad preview, and having to kind of say to yourself, well, that preview was bad because it was 4 people in a basement. And 3 of them haven't heard of the Edinburgh Fringe before, and they don't know what's going on here. But those ones bother me, because you want to do a good Edinburgh show, and so you get a bit of self-doubt. But if I was to do a comedy club now and have a tough one, I don't think it bothers me at all. I think it's happened enough times in the past that you kind of hope that you even know it's not fully your fault. Maybe it's the audience a bit weird, or it's a weird gig, or you kind of know where you went wrong. But yeah, I think I could sit pretty comfortably in 20 minutes of dying on my ass now.
So, having established yourself as a comedian, was it everything that you expected, or what kind of surprises did you encounter?
I don't know really. I think maybe the thing that comedians say, I don't know if this sounds sad or something, but every stage you kind of get used to the excitement a little bit, so you're kind of chasing something a little bit more. So when you're like first not getting paid for gigs, you're kind of saying, all I want to do is get on the circuit. I just want to be on the comedy circuit and I want to be gigging. And you're getting like a train to Middlesbrough, and you're getting paid to do that, and you sat on the train like writing ideas, and it's all exciting. But then after kind of like 5 or 6 years, you're like, I've got to get on another fucking train like for 3 hours to just sit. I can't write because I'm on a little chair. So the travel can become so monotonous. So I was kind of struck by how many people, as soon as they're on the circuit for a little while, are like, I need to get off the circuit. And then you want to be like touring your own show. You want to be doing TV and stuff. So yeah, I was a little bit surprised at how quickly, once people had achieved what a few years ago you would see as the dream, and then like, oh, this is terrible. I'd love to Yeah, but I think it's just the travel. I think the travel can be very monotonous and stuff. But yeah, that kind of constant looking upwards of you sort of forget that it was your ambition to be where you are.
Yeah. And like you say, performing sort of in the north and traveling around, how much difference do you find in different towns, different parts of the country, in their ways that they respond to your comedy? Is there cultural differences?
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of don't think there is. I do think there's a couple of places which are maybe not harder, but like people say about like Liverpool as being a place that I think if they like you and you're doing well, it can feel like an incredible reaction.
Yeah.
But I think you do have to prove yourself a bit more. And if you're not doing well, I think just the bar either side is almost a bit more severe. Like if you do badly, I think you'll do worse. If you do well, you'll do better.
Right.
Like it does feel like there's a real you have to kind of gain a bit more respect, like in Liverpool, and maybe the gigs I've done in Belfast have felt like you've really got to earn their respect quite early on. But I don't feel like there's a north-south thing.
Right.
I think it just depends how much people have seen comedy and like comedy. Because before I moved to London, there'd be a few people up north who would say, "Oh, I gigged in London and it's terrible."
Yeah.
And they don't want to laugh. They don't go out to laugh. And so I thought like London was just full of miserable people. But I think it's just someone who's had a bad gig in London and come back and gone, like, London is terrible. But really, they had a bad gig. So yeah, I think it's just more, if people have never seen live stand-up before, then they maybe expect a bit more kind of gaggy, sort of clubby stuff. But yeah.
So way back in 2008, you were doing Chortle Student Comedy Awards. You've done many competitions since then. How do you feel about competitions and awards?
I think there's sort of all these things are like stupid but necessary in that there's so much in comedy in the comedy industry, I think, which is maybe not designed to, but I think lowers the self-esteem and affects the mental health of everyone involved. So like those competitions, I think they're good if you make the finals or you get placed and stuff. They can be a good way for people to see you, but they do really early on just create a competitiveness between this group of like-minded shared hobbyists who are kind of going, I have to beat this person. I have to be I have to be funnier than that person.
Right.
So like, and I know lots of new acts who have been really upset because they haven't progressed in stuff. So I really don't like that element to it. I think comedy would be a bit healthier if it didn't have that. But I think it just needs it because how else do you kind of unearth people who I guess there's no other way to sort of give people a bit of a leg up. But yeah, you always say to people that there are people who've won lots of competitions and then maybe 10 years later are not doing comedy. And there are people who have done badly in those competitions who maybe because the stuff they do is a bit more creative or a bit more sort of complex than a little 5-minute set.
Yeah.
And they end up then being, the winners of like the Edinburgh Comedy Award and the big things and go on to real sort of artistic acclaim. So yeah, I think they're useful, but really I think they don't matter at all. If you keep gigging and you're good enough, stuff will happen.
Yeah. We've mentioned Edinburgh a few times, and we're going to talk about your new show, but you're a veteran of the Edinburgh Fringe. So what's your festival experience like?
It's good. I mean, I hate like now, in July at the time of recording, because I tend to write to the deadline. Like the deadline really kind of spurs me on to get everything in place.
Yeah.
So talking to most comedians in June and July, it's just people having panic attacks and people being stressed or going like, I'm fucking shit. Oh God. and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's not the most fun time until you get up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think there's just so much pressure put on Edinburgh of like awards, and it can make or break your career. So I think unless you're kind of good enough mentally to not care about that, or you're already established, so you don't need that. But when you get up there and your show's good, it's the best thing to do, because really I think I've always placed it at like the highest thing for comedians. Really, is that you could have a great 20-minute set or whatever, but to hold people's attention for the hour, and if you can construct a bit of a story, or to have them kind of hanging on something, or to add an extra emotion or something a bit more creative, I kind of think that's what we should be aiming for, really. So when you get to sort of do your hour every day for the month, it's that bit is so fun. I think it's just the financial side and the kind of business and sort of stress around it is getting a bit uncontrollable, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not a fun answer.
So your debut hour, 2013, show Anything. How did it feel to be doing your first hour then?
Yeah, it was very exciting. I mean, it was so long ago now that it felt like, I guess, like 10 years. So in 10 years is like a real like shift, I think, in. So I was up on a really like strong year of like newcomers, and my show I think was good, but it was very much just here's all the stand up that I've got,
right,
and a bit of a kind of ending. But it felt like the time to go up. But now people go up on their debut show with such a kind of clear, this has to be who I am, beginning, middle, and end, a story.
Right.
We're aiming for awards and big PRs and stuff. So I still think I was kind of learning who I wanted to be as a comedian.
Yeah.
And learning a bit about Edinburgh. I'd been up there doing like package shows and split hours and stuff. But like the discipline of doing an hour every day. It's like you kind of have to do it to understand what it's what it's like. But yeah, I mean, I really loved it. And yeah, it's just such a good learning curve, because you do that and then you slowly kind of go, oh, well, I like this bit about it.
Yeah.
But looking back, I think this could have been better. And then your next show, you kind of change those things and you change those things. So thinking back of like my debut and the show I did last, I think the difference in quality is huge. And just the difference in like my personality and persona and confidence on stage. I would hate to watch. If someone had a video of my debut show, I would burn it to the ground. I don't think I could bear watching it.
So each time you develop a new hour and you're working on a new show, obviously you put a lot of work into it and a lot of thought into it. Do you then, the show you did a year before or a few years before, are they just gone out of your mind, or do you mine back the mind of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Ian Smith, and see what he would have had to say?
Yeah, I guess they are sort of gone. Like, I mean, with this show, I'm doing like a very small tour of it, I think in February, March kind of time. Yeah. And I might see if I can take it out to some of the like international places I've been. And if I do that, because I haven't really done a tour before, I'd maybe put some of the best bits from another show in as well, and kind of see if I could amalgamate a few things. But yeah, usually you kind of see how Edinburgh goes, and then I try and chill out in September, not really think about comedy. And then, yeah, you're pretty quickly going, well, what else do I want to talk about? What else do I have to say? And that material is sort of gone. You can maybe reuse like 3 or 4 minutes if it feels super relevant. But yeah, it's slightly heartbreaking when you work on something for a long time. Yeah. And then, yeah, you do just have to go, okay, what next?
Yeah.
But I remember feeling like that, and Rob Beckett's always he's so like chilled out, and whereas I could be so like anxious and stressy, and Rob about writing a new show would just be like, well, it's going to be better than your last one, isn't it? Because you're a better comedian now. You've been doing it longer. You're better. So every show you do is just going to be better than the last one. Like he would just take it as an absolute given that everything you do will just increase in quality because you're better and you've learned more. But whereas I was more in the camp of being terrified because everything I have is now unusable and you have to just generate a new hour in a year. But yeah, it always seems to come.
Yeah. You've mentioned a little bit about being more anxious person. Do you get anxious when you're about to go on stage? Do you overthink it, or are you more natural once you start talking?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, we'll get like a bit of nerves before you go on.
Yeah,
but it's not like wanting it to go well sort of nerves. But yeah, I don't think I feel any anxiety like on stage or in the kind of the comedy environment. It will all anything like that will be in the kind of writing and going, do I have something to say, or what if my previous thing was the best thing I've done and I'm not going to do something else.
Yeah,
that would be where my kind of like stress comes,
right,
through wanting to create more stuff. But yeah, but being on stage really would feel more relaxed than I would off stage.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's nothing anyone could like say to me when I'm on stage that would make me like panic really.
Right.
Like you might think, oh, this is difficult to deal with, but I would still feel pretty at ease, I think.
Yeah. And are you more comfortable with the material, or as you alluded to before, are you happier as an improviser?
Yeah, I think both really. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes if I think one of the things that comedians make a mistake with, especially new acts, is like this thing where they got a must gig every night of the week, and like new acts will maybe brag of like kind of saying, oh, my first year I did 250 gigs, or I've done 300 gigs this year. And you just think like, well, where is any of your personal life gone? Or where are you getting anecdotes from if all your evenings are here?
Yeah.
And you do the same material so much that I think you can get a bit bored of it and your performance can go. So I really love doing my material, especially when it's new and fresh. But I think I love improvising because it just adds a bit of difference and excitement to every gig.
Yeah.
So it stops me from kind of going, I'm just going to do the same 20 minutes I did yesterday. I always like leave little moments in the set where I'm like, well, I have to ask someone something here, and that will then usually lead to some improv and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I really like improvising. I think it just keeps everything a bit exciting.
The person that you are when you're on stage, are we seeing the real you? Is it an exaggerated you? Is it a character of you? Who are you when you're performing?
I think I'm pretty I think I'm pretty like natural on stage. Maybe get a bit more northern and a bit more shouty. Like I think I saw a review that I really liked where it basically described me as getting like disproportionately excited about things that aren't that good and disproportionately angry about things that aren't that bad. And I think that's kind of what I do really.
Yeah.
Of kind of being, this is amazing and I'm talking about nothing, or this is the worst thing that's ever happened and it's just me talking about something I didn't like about the soap in my house or something like that.
Talking about the worst thing that ever happened, how was your lockdown experience when comedy ground to a halt?
It was kind of mixed, really, because so I was back in Goole because I was going to be. So it's pretty heartbreaking at first. I mean, for everyone, but my kind of personal thing was I was in Adelaide in Australia, and I was meant to do Adelaide, then a month in Melbourne, and then like a week off and then a month in New Zealand for all the comedy festivals out there.
Yeah.
And so we did Adelaide, and then everything was cancelled.
Yeah.
So, and I'd got rid of like where I was renting in London, which is kind of a blessing. Otherwise I would have been paying rent and earning no money. So yeah, went back home to Goole, and that was quite nice. And I would sit and I wrote a lot of scripts in like the first few months. But yeah, the longer it went on, the more you lose a bit of that. Okay, 6 months, this will be done, so I'll be productive, I'll exercise. When it gets to like a year and a year and a half, you are kind of thinking, well, don't know if this job is coming back.
Yeah.
And it's very, it's a tough time for comedians, especially when like, it was tough for everyone, but there's like established comedians who would then pick up like big Zoom gigs or would still get like kind of bits of TV work. And you kind of felt a bit like the people who were established would be okay.
Yeah.
And they were all going to get through it and were getting work or would get work when it come back. But it felt like that the level below was the ones where you're like, we don't know if the work will come back again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite, I guess it was tense for a while for everyone. But I think it helped me in being a bit more productive because I had no deadlines and no reason to write, but I would find myself writing scripts and stuff. But I certainly didn't write any stand-up, I think, for a year because I didn't want to write about the pandemic because I find it a bit boring when I see a comedian now sort of going, oh, do you remember in the pandemic? And you're sort of like, yeah, we all remember that. And we've all heard so much about it.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was going to be a fun idea to come out and go, hey, remember COVID? And some people being like, yeah, a relative of mine was seriously ill. And so, I just kind of avoided stand-up really for a year.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because like you said, people doing all these gigs and not having any anecdotes. Of course, every comedian not performing for a year, 2 years, the only anecdotes they have is what happened, their experience of COVID and lockdown. So of course, then immediately everyone starts talking about it because they don't have anything else to mention.
Yeah, and even like people can do great stuff on it, and it's always funny if it's like you add a bit of specificity and it's personal, but when you have a comedian going like, oh, like Zoom gigs are weird, aren't they? And you're like, yeah, I've heard 20 other comedians say Zoom gigs are weird. But I don't think audiences mind. But I think I really try and not cover something that other people have covered. But I mean, I imagine I do. It's very difficult not to. But I think a lot of people as well just don't want to be reminded of the mass global pandemic anymore.
Talking about writing comedy, you writing for others because you've written for things like the News Quiz and Have I Got News for You? How do you write for jokes that other people are going to tell because they're not you?
Yeah, well, I think it depends. Like, so when I used to write on the News Quiz, I would write for. It was when Miles Jupp was hosting, so I would listen to, especially when I was first getting in the writers' room, I would listen to three or four episodes of the News Quiz, and I'd maybe skip a little bit past the panel bits because it would always end with Miles saying that was the news that, and then his kind of jokes.
Right.
So I just kind of binged all of his bits, and then the next time I write on it, I would kind of do that again as like a bit of a refresher, and just try and get into his persona a bit. And I think it's easier to write for other people. Like I think like for me, it was like blowing my own trumpet. I think most comedians, if someone tells me an idea, I feel like I can pretty quickly say, oh, and you could do this and this and this, or what about this?
Yeah.
Because I think I find the problem when I'm writing for myself is you care too much about it because it's yours, and you have all these things in your head of going, well, that didn't really happen, or do you really think that, or has someone else already covered that? And all the internal self-doubt of, oh, is this funny enough? Am I good enough? Am I whatever? But when someone else has given you an idea, those things don't exist. And it's a bit like the grass is greener kind of thing. So someone will tell you something and you go, oh man, that's a great idea. Look at all these possibilities that you can't do with your own stuff because you're too attached.
Right.
But yeah, and like Miles was like a really fun person to write for because he has like this kind of upper middle class, slightly erudite, sometimes like very wordy punchlines. So you would put a bit more detail in them, like be like the sort of person who, rather than saying car, you would pick a sort of very specific middle class brand of car to like texture the jokes and stuff. So yeah, it's quite fun to get into someone's persona. Like I found before, I remember doing this as a joke with my housemate, but as mad as it is, we'll sometimes do it to myself, where my process for writing, once I've stopped rushing around and I sit down and do it, is I have this kind of checklist of ways you can brainstorm out from a joke, but then also started thinking of kind of 3 like archetypes of comedian, like an observational comedian, like a sort of creative, like maybe set piece type comedian and this kind of thing. But I would look at the routines I've got and almost like in my head, I'm doing an impression of the most mainstream, like maybe slightly kind of hack observational comic, because in kind of playfully going, what would I do with this? And doing the kind of, oh, well, we all do this. And you know that person who does. But it kind of frees your mind a bit. And I find sometimes I do that. And some of it I think, oh, I wouldn't say that on stage. But then another bit you go, oh, I think that is like, I think that is an observation actually that people would like and that I could make my own. So yeah, I think it just feels a bit easier to do it for someone else. And also one of the big things I think I've learned writing for others, and also like if I've started doing the news quiz quite a lot.
Yes.
And you're given like subjects on maybe halfway through Wednesday of what's going to be on the show. And the same when you're kind of writing on it. And you maybe have a couple of hours on each subject to read it and go, what are the funny things? And then what are my jokes on them?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's stuff like 1 week I had the Taliban reclaiming Afghanistan, and it's on surface level really not funny, but you have to go on the radio and you have to make jokes about it.
Yeah.
So in 2 hours, you're going through the article and you're like, there's something in that, there's something in that, that's maybe something. And I kind of realized that there's no excuse then if I look at a joke of mine and go, I don't know if that's quite working. And then you think, well, you got 5 minutes out of, got a horrible subject really.
Yeah.
So just spend an hour and write everything you can, go online, look up articles. And so, yeah, basically being told by someone you have 2 hours, or another comedian's employing you and says, I need some jokes by tomorrow for this.
Yeah.
You can't then say to them, oh, sorry, I couldn't come up with any. So you just have to. And yeah, the deadline I find the deadline is the all-powerful thing. If I have to do something by a certain time, I will get it done, even if I'm having like a Red Bull and I'm up at 4 a.m. kind of thing.
Oh, well, speaking about writing, tell me about your new show, Crushing. What inspired the material for the show? How did you go about writing, putting it together and making it what it is?
Well, I guess this is all at the time of speaking because I've still got 3 weeks where the deadline is kicking in.
Yeah.
Yeah, even recently I've been adding bits at previews and they've been working, and sort of thinking to myself, why can't I have done that in May? That would have made me so much more chilled out. But yeah, this show is it's basically about stress. That's the kind of theme of it. And so the title Crushing refers to like two things that I think sort of come at the beginning and end of like this sort of little maybe like 7-month chunk of my life that the show's about.
Yeah.
Where so after all the lockdowns, so I hadn't been to the dentist in like 3 years or something. So I had lockdown, and then another bit of time. I think I probably got the dentist, and I went there, and I got sort of told off quite badly about grinding my teeth, like in sort of quite a big way. Like, and I can notice like where it's happened. So, and they really sort of spooked me with it, and basically saying this is like a stress thing. And you really need to stop doing this. So you maybe need to like de-stress and sort that out. And it was a bit of a sort of existential moment where you're like, can see a physical sign of the stress that I knew I had, but I'm probably just quite used to. So that's kind of like what started me, I guess, wanting to talk about why I'm stressed,
right?
Why I get far too stressed about stuff. And the things I've done to try and calm down. But I guess the whole thing, a bit like what we were talking about with deadlines, is that when someone says to you, you need to stop stressing immediately, and you start trying to throw all this relaxation shit at the wall, it's so counterintuitive, because I was maybe doing like 6 different things to try and stop me stressing over the course of a week, and all of them awful, all of them not working. So every time something doesn't work, you're more stressed because you're like, well, I'm not going to have any fucking teeth. And it kind of culminated in me going to Slovakia with my hairdresser and driving a tank over a car after we'd smashed it with some sledgehammers. And sort of doing it and thinking that was a genuinely relaxing thing, but that can't be it for me. That can't be how I unwind. And sort of, yeah, I guess the story of the show would be, yeah, it's sort of like me having a 7-month panic of like, well, how do I de-stress? Because I don't want to make like slow, meaningful changes in my life because they're quite difficult. So maybe I could just find something and that's me done. So yeah, I think it's like, yeah, about a 7-month manic episode where I tried to stop stressing and ended up in Slovakia doing something that's supposed to only be for stag do's that I had to convince them to let me do with just me and my hairdresser because that's the only person I could get. So I had to pay like €650 for the tank. So that made me more stressed, really. Like financially, I've taken a real hit trying to relax. So yeah, I guess it's about that misguided 7 months of my life.
Someone who's put so much time and effort and hard work into comedy, do you still enjoy comedy as an entertainment? Can you go out and watch other comedians?
I think a few comedians are like this. So I think the comedy I enjoy now, there's still comedy and comedians I really love, but often you're watching them going, oh, that's good. Oh, I wish I had come up with that. And it's very analytical. So I think it's the comedians who are very different who still really make me laugh. So like I much prefer to see Tim Key and Sam Campbell and John Kearns and like Jordan Brooks is, as much as he can, still doing like a man and a mic stand up most of the time, but it's a bit unique.
Yeah.
And I think they're the things that I can really almost kind of forget I'm a comedian just because it's so different to what I would do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what I really love seeing at the minute, or even like a few American comics, because I think you're so involved in the industry and you kind of know everyone over here, and it's quite nice to watch someone who you're like, I don't know what they're like, I don't know what they're doing, all the competitive element isn't there, and but I'm sort of trying to talk about that in my show, where the past 3 or 4 previews I've been performing like 5 minutes of the show sat in the audience, which I need to work out how to do in case I would like to hope that some days I'll sell out my venue, and that's then there's no spare chair for me to get in. But yeah, I've been doing sort of 5 minutes just sat in the crowd. So a lot of people can't see me, and I'm just I'm talking a bit about how because I guess this is part of previewing of trying to make this funny, but that I think comedy's always been like my only real hobby, and it's the thing I really love doing and love watching. So I don't really have another like a thing in my life that's just for fun and relaxation, because comedy is so tied to like finances and career.
Right.
So I don't think I have any hobbies now. I just have work. And I think it's always funnier in comedy if the comedian on stage is stressed out or embarrassed or something negative. I don't know if you want to hear someone come on stage and go, my life's fantastic at the minute. You'd be like, oh, fuck off. So I'm trying to sort of de-stress, but also hoping that my life is stressful so that I have things to talk about. So yeah, my only outlet of relaxation is basically talking about why I'm stressed to people. And if people don't enjoy it, then that makes me feel sad. So that's my, I think that's like a fundamental reason why I find it difficult to chill out. But I'm trying to make that funny so it doesn't sound like I'm basically going on stage and going, this job is fucking terrible.
We talked there about previewing and about adding stuff in. How does your finished show, when it starts playing in Edinburgh, how much does it change over the course of the run?
Hopefully not too much. I think the first 2 days of Edinburgh are classed as previews as well, and no reviewers are allowed in.
Yeah.
So they're kind of a bit more relaxed, where you can still kind of feel out some last changes. But really, I think after those 2 dates, you want to be in a position where if someone comes in and reviews it, I'm happy with this. But yeah, I would say that the first week of the Fringe, if there's any bits that aren't quite working as much as I would like them to, then I'll keep working on the show.
Yeah,
I'll kind of get up and listen back to it and keep changing it. And sometimes you overrun a little bit or underrun and you cut an ad. But yeah, so maybe the first week it will still change until you kind of want to get to a point where you're like, well, I've worked on it enough now and it's done.
Yeah.
And just enjoy performing it.
So with all your experience in your many shows, what are the most important lessons that you've learned?
I guess like some of them are like really maybe practical ones, but like yeah, I guess we touched on it earlier that I think gigging, doing comedy every night and then like say watching it all the time, I think will not make you a great comedian. I think it can make, and maybe it's different for different people, but I think like to try and balance like gigging and like enjoying life and doing things that because you have to have something to relay to people.
Yeah. So
I think it's that thing of like, I think you're often told when you start comedy of like, gotta keep gigging and keep working and keep working. But I think if you did 4 gigs a week and you were happy with that, then I think you'd become a better comedian than someone who did 7 gigs a week. Like even if not immediately, you would eventually be a better actor than them. So I think the importance of like just having a life that is interesting to say back to people. I think that's a main thing, because I would try and gig all the time, and I think I only started getting like a lot better when I had stuff going on in my life that people would want to hear about. So yeah, maybe it sort of sounds like not the best advice, but I'm basically saying don't do loads of comedy.
Gig less.
Yeah. But I think the lessons, I think what's made me a better comedian is when I started writing on the news quiz. I think that changed a lot for me, because I just realized that if I have the discipline to set myself a deadline of you need to write something in this time, the confidence of knowing, well, I will do that. So I think the hardest thing in comedy is creating a deadline for yourself that doesn't really exist. That like if you can say with like writing an Edinburgh show, my show is going to be ready 1st of June, that's when it needs to be 100% finished. Then you'd have a good show, you'd have 2 months to improve it. But really those deadlines don't exist. So they're kind of artificial. But yeah, I think if you can get the discipline to do that, like that any subject is funny, that I think I realized after writing about harrowing subjects for the news all the time.
Yeah. So what have been then so far your best and worst experiences in comedy?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just trying to go like worst first, so it ends on a positive. But yeah, I'm not sure really. I think like the worst one maybe like moves all the time, because really like you care like more and more. So like if I did a preview tomorrow that went badly, that would feel like the worst to me, because I want this Edinburgh show to be really good. Like any gig in the past that's gone badly, you kind of get over really.
Right.
So I think it would more be like career things where you feel like you were close to a big thing, like an award or a TV thing, and it hasn't happened. I think sometimes that can take a while to get over.
Right.
I remember doing a sitcom pilot that everyone was telling us would get a series, and when we found out it didn't, I think I was kind of gutted for a couple of months, because I thought that would be a real sort of game changer. But and yeah, maybe the same with like happy moments. Like yeah, again, it can just change. I think doing an hour show that you're proud of, after you've been working on it and you have periods of self-doubt and stuff, when it works, that's I think the relief and joy of that. Yeah, and I guess then it would just be like, yeah, I worked a lot to try and get on the news quiz, so getting on that and being asked back, like I feel very proud of. So yeah, it's probably things like that.
Yeah. So Ian, how can we find out about you? How can we find out where you're playing?
Well, all my stuff's usually on all the socials. So everything like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is usually / Ian Smith Comedy. I haven't got Threads yet. Everyone's on Threads. So I think I'm going to go on that. I hate this sort of desperation of a new social media outlet and putting stuff out. But I will probably be there as well. And I have a podcast with Amy Gledhill called Northern News, which you can get on wherever you get your podcasts. But yeah, probably the social media would be the best place, and I'll kind of tweet and post stuff regularly about where I'm going to be.
And so finally, Ian, please, can you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
It's tough because you're talking to me pre-Edinburgh Fringe when I'm sort of anxiously writing a new show. I'm trying to have an answer that isn't like, I'll tell you what it is in a nutshell. It's fucking stupid, and there's so much pressure on comedians, and Edinburgh's expensive, and it's all a load of shit. But yeah, I guess in a nutshell, the nicest thing about it is like to have a thought that you think is funny to share, and I guess that can feel quite vulnerable if you kind of give that thought or observation and people are like, I don't fucking do that, or I don't know what you're talking about. But so to have that like connection when it works and you get the laughter, yeah, there's just something of the joy of like you're kind of commanding a room's attention, and they're listening to you and agreeing with you and going, yeah, you're right, that is funny. So maybe as pathetic as that sounds, it's quite nice to have comedy in a nutshell is having a room of people you don't know agree with you and kind of make you feel nice. So at its best, you're just coming away going, well, that felt nice, and yeah, the things I said didn't make people go, what are you on about? That's all you can hope for in life.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.